going to want to throw the baby out with the bathwater a little bit on this one, but I just need you to reference the title of the show and just trust me for a minute, okay? One thing I've been thinking about a lot is how woke culture is the new Christianity. I mean, most of it rose up as a response to how Western Christianity colored American social culture, but doesn't matter how you label it, a snakehead is a snakehead, and the snake here is morality policing culture. Which unfortunately kind of means that a lot of anti-woke conservatives are actually right in some of the deductions that they make about liberal culture being a little nonsensical. But before you rage out about the introduction, hi, I'm Kady. I'll be your internet cult leader today as I guide you through my nuanced thoughts, or what some may call a very difficult conversation regarding the human urge to gain self-esteem through compulsory hierarchical structures. Said differently, the human urge to judge others on something you made up just so you could feel better about yourself.
I used to wear Stockholm, now I prefer alone. I'd rather do this on my own than be disrespected and feel so neglected. I'm ready to go and right this wrong.
Today's show is sponsored by my caffeine addiction. I tell you my 3 go-tos for satisfying said addiction, but it become an annoyingly easy way to demonstrate the point that we're going to make today, as droves of people throw me on the fire for something some CEO did somewhere at some time while I was focusing on defeating time blindness, existential crisis, and an attraction to emotionally unavailable people. But my caffeine addiction does want you to know that the complete and ad-free version of the show is available on the Difficult Conversations Patreon, and we would love it if you joined us there to further the conversation. As someone who is anti-neglecting an issue just because problematic people use that issue as an excuse to be problematic, the issues with woke culture is something that was difficult for me to acknowledge, but it has been eating me up, especially as more commentary creators that I respect begin to speak on the issue as a form of calling in instead of calling out. But the simple truth is this: extremism begets extremism. Newton's third law: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We know this. That is to say, all of us that are pro-equality and pro-freedom for all, we understand where these ideas of extreme liberation come from. Quick note, put an asterisk by liberation because we'll have to come back to discuss how these movements have completely divorced revolution from liberation, as it's an integral aspect of what makes these mindsets so problematic for everybody, including the people that it so-called intends to help. But anyway, we totally understand that these movements are a response to extremely oppressed ancient structures that govern our society, which of course begins an infinite feedback loop once the conservative powers return the energy in kind. And here's where I need you to be very careful about the knee-jerk reaction emotions and feelings that have just entered your mind. Beginning soapbox about how morality policing is being weaponized against you. You're used to people identifying this loop as a way to say that these powers should not be challenged. You're used to people identifying this loop as a way of assigning one-sided blame to people who've been positioned as victims. And because of the righteous rage that this provokes, this is typically where you turn your brain off, stop the process of actively perceiving what's actually being said, why it's being said, and allow the ghosts of silenced injustices of the past to materialize in the present to fight a battle that you conceded a long time ago instead of staying present in the moment. And of that, I just have to say before moving on that this too is a form of psychological warfare and oppression. When Black women told you that the experience and expression of joy while Black is in of itself a form of revolution, this is what we were talking about. The whole world, and particularly on the internet, has caught up to us and has not figured out how to cope. When you allow people, entities, situations, whatever, to constantly trigger you into a state of rage or sadness, you allow them to weaponize your mind, body, and emotions against you. This reminder is often met by what we'll label as the woke liberal community for the sake of this conversation, but really we're just referring to anybody that's anti-oppression. It's met by the woke community screaming that we can't just ignore the horrors of the world, but my sisters and brothers and ladies in Christ, I'd like to introduce you to a little something called the middle. There's something in between being completely ignorant and constantly outraged. Just like there's something in between hating your ex and pretending that they created no harm for you in the relationship. There's something in between denying the social power that the patriarchy grants men and denying that the patriarchy also hurts men. There's a middle. Like, I'm not big on generation wars, especially since as a baby millennial, I grew up with the elder members of Gen Z. I relate to Gen Z ideologies and experiences more than I do proper millennials or elder millennials. But I never cease to be floored by Gen Z's rampant rejection of a middle existing. Like, y'all took the floor is lava game and made the middle lava. Babies, what is going on? What is this chronic all or nothing thinking that you refuse to let go of, although it's actively keeping you in a state of alarm? Every time I post a video about a personal life philosophy, someone in the comment goes, oh my God, this just changed my lives. I've never thought of this. And with so much love and grace, I say 9 times out of 10, the life philosophy that the commenter has never thought of was a middle ground, nuance, a gray area, if you will. The acknowledgement that multiple things can be true at once. It blows Zennials' minds every time that, and I just don't understand how this happened. I mean, I do. I absolutely 100% the doom generation born under some of the most harrowing historic events amplified by the ability to consume them rapidly on an iPad. But like, they're also the therapy generation. And as someone that's been in therapy since 12, I can tell you the pitfalls of all or nothing thinking it's therapy day one. So I don't understand why they aren't applying the resources they promote, but I digress. You don't have to be actively sad and angry all the time to be a humanitarian. In fact, you actively end up adding to the problem that you're supposed to be solving because 1, now you're making these issues about your feelings, and 2, you join the population of human beings that need to be saved. It's like jumping in to save a drowning person without stopping to put a life raft on, even though you know you can't swim. Now the lifeguard has to save you both. You allow rage bait to strip you of your power and agency. You are allowing problematic people to program your brain to disable itself from thinking critically when faced with difficult topics, or to busy yourself with educating people in spaces that they did not enter to be educated. They entered to troll you. And then you take that spirit of restlessness and you direct it towards those you should be organizing change with to create infighting whenever they try to have strategic conversations with you, because you default to the brainwashing response of foaming at the mouth and attacking whenever a nuanced conversation comes up. You fully accepted your place as the inside ops. You are the inside ops. You pause and distract from and dismantle positive change within the group because you want to fight about your absence of nuance, all because you haven't done your own work. Sorry, I just got triggered. I recently saw myself in a Mina Lay video where she put my video about doing your own work in her video essay about problems with female relationships these days. Word to you, Mina Lay. I'm so glad you're a fan. That's freaking awesome. Love that. A bitch quits people pleasing for 10 seconds and all of a sudden she's enemy number 1 of female relationships. Go off, Mina Lay. Anyways, all because you won't do your own work in terms of regularly checking in with your body and emotions and explore these conditioned visceral reactions and check out of spaces that are triggering you. We've already learned that our brains can't really tell the difference between reality and our thoughts depending on the intensity of the scenario imagined. For example, it is stated that if an anxiety sufferer is experiencing an anxious situation or imagining it, they will experience the same stress response anyway. We've also learned that our body responds to perceived trauma experienced by others as if you are experiencing it yourself. The book, My Grandmother's Hands, does a great job of delving into this, by the way, and all the impacts of community and generational trauma. That is to say, when you constantly put yourself in the line of fire in social media comment section conversations that you do not have to engage in, you can scroll away, disregard, log out, whatever. Your body is experiencing the same amount of stress as it would if you were actually in these horrible situations that are being projected at you. You are martyring yourself for no reason, especially with everything that we know about the various stress responses like freeze, fawn, fight. You're willfully engaging in this behavior that will disable you and not actually make a difference at all. Empathy is good. Empathy is important, but the experience of holding empathy in and of itself, it's not a revolution. And when you lose the ability to make positive change because empathy has emotionally paralyzed you, you require others to care for you and rehabilitate you instead of focusing on the actual change. You become an agent protecting the oppressive sources. You got it? Cool. So anyway, extremism will always beget extremism. Newton's third law: for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. We know this. And what we should have learned from the Mockingjay as the Hunger Game generation is that extremism extorted from the other side is simply the snake regrowing its head after it's been chopped off. Which circles us back to where I said a lot of conservatives have valid criticisms of woke ideas because of this inability to see where these ideas and movements exist within the whole of society, or honestly, a disinterest in seeing the bigger picture. They become tools of separation, narcissism, and loneliness, unfortunately. For example, as the captain-in-chief of the Do Your Own Work movement, imagine my surprise when I realized that the girlies were leveraging this mantra as an excuse to be shifty friends and shifty community members, what was meant to remind society to be mindful of treating the people in their lives as living therapy tools spewed out into it's a form of classism to say hello to people that you encounter at work. What is wrong with you? No one is siphoning emotional labor from you or leveraging your working class status against you by asking how your day is and expecting you to answer. You're just you're a bad vibe. You're just a bad vibe. You are not likable. You think you're the quirky main character, but you're the grouchy, I hate everything and everyone, and I'm gonna make it everybody's problem old man. There are these constant complaints about feeling isolated, abandoned, and aggressively fearful of being socially rejected or not being reciprocated in a friendly manner, while grotesquely abhorring the idea of saying hello to people. You reduce people to their worst takes or mistakes, and you see every bit of connection as a selfish inconvenience. Like, if you really look closely at the data, these ideas and behaviors might start to be like a straight line between the two of them. Like one begets the other, babe. Woke culture has gone from an awareness of social issues in society that create harm for marginalized people and creating safe spaces for them to be included in and protected and positive change to bloodthirsty witch hunts that care more about finding a sacrifice for the mob than the experiences of injustice for victims. It's become more about a new moral hierarchy that replaces religion's presence in mainstream society to give people that don't have any other means to work through their everyday insecurities a way to prop up their egos without doing any work. Why work through your fears of inadequacy when you could just jump on the internet and shame someone who believes that a woman's place is in the kitchen? That's an easier dopamine grab than learning a new skill, for sure. Woke culture is the new Christianity, especially when we examine the position of the Christian church in intersectional marginalized communities. A great example that I heard TikTok creator Cecilia Regina relay, paraphrasing here, is that poor Black Southern men who face the brunt of racial oppression and work in social spaces, as well as economic limitations, were able to use the church hierarchy as a way to grab social status and power. What they couldn't gain in status in the real world, they created for themselves through their interpretation of the divine laws of God, often bestowing prestige on the basis of simply being a man who is made in God's image, with women being made in man's image. Beyond joining the parish that lead the flock in sermons, they could join committees, leadership teams within the church that gave them a sense of power and control. And maybe the most relevant social power play, they also used their interpretation of divine text as a governing social script that dictated how members of the church were to behave in order to secure proximity to God. If you show up to church on time wearing the proper attire with a family structure that the church approves of and speaks about the things deemed favorable in a manner that's deemed respectable, and you're only ever observed abiding by these governing social rules that are perceived as holy or righteous or faithful for living in accordance with God's will, it gives you social status. But you can't really measure how holy or righteous one is without measuring how unholy or unrighteous another is. So there's a dichotomy where the recognition of lowliness of another actively boosts your own standing. And regardless of the great promises of the separation of church and state, the Christian church in particular in American culture has always had a prevalent influence over both government and generally accepted social norms. Much of social prejudice and legal oppression of women, queer people, brown people, and differently abled people comes directly from popular and usually incorrect interpretations of the Holy Bible. So, as younger generations began to dismantle these ideas of exclusion and social hierarchies established by traditional religion by pushing against sexism, racism, homophobia, ableism, not ageism, Gen Z freaking loves ageism, a little treat, I guess, xenophobia and transphobia, all of that, it creates or has created a void. If you can't reclaim social status by way of purity, by calling another woman a slut or making fun of poor people, intellectualism, or dropping a few rhymes with baguettes, you don't belong to the population of people who have racial and economic power in this world. How else will you lay claim to social status? By doing what marginalized people did with the church, create a new social hierarchy by rebranding Puritan culture as social justice. Just like the church was meant to be a place of refuge, salvation, and transformation, these social movements were meant to be a safe place for inclusion and education. Neither spaces were created to shame and attack, but here we are. You will never reach people in a way that allows them to want to adopt your message if you attack them for being ignorant. The other side of that coin is that it's not necessarily your individual job to educate the ignorant or rehabilitate the problematic, but you don't have to engage in verbal warfare with every ignorant or problematic individual you encounter either. There's something in between. You don't have to actively search out those that you've deemed to be living outside of your code of social morality for the sole purpose of filleting them for the masses. Just like you don't have to actively make every conversation about a potential moral failing. An example of this is the video I posted about the celebrity lookalike filter that had a Coke bottle in the background and several audience members directing their commentary towards the ethics of purchasing, consuming, and being within proximity of a Coke product. There is a prevailing culture of compulsively centering moral politics at all times, and it does nothing to support positive change. It is closer to a toddler level tantrum than a step towards liberation, which requires revolution. And revolution requires you to talk to other people, to connect, to talk to them, to work with them, to trust them, to collaborate, to plan, to show up in public spaces or invite them in your home. You can't do that if you're looking for the moral failings, or if they fall a little short of your glory, you cast them into the banishment zone. Oh my God, you kind of made me feel a little uncomfortable, so I can never speak to you again. Sorry. Calling my therapist now. Which maybe brings us to the most important topic under this umbrella: woke culture, liberalism, whatever you want to call it. It seems to begin and end with internet arguments, feeling really bad all the time, in ethics policing. There seems to be no tangible forms of organization toward reform for most that participate in this behavior. They aren't the people showing up at the protests. They aren't the people meeting with community members regularly to implement and develop strategies for legislative change. And for the most part, they couldn't take part in these necessary parts of revolution if they wanted to, because that would require patience and tolerance and acceptance of people that share different ideologies and experiences than you. Which, as you probably guessed, brings us full circle back to how woke and self-aware culture has become the individualism narcissistic beast thought to destroy. Suddenly everyone that disagrees with you is an enemy. Every person that you clash with is someone that doesn't serve you. People expressing feelings that challenge your own are gaslighting you. The experience of others aren't as valuable as yours because you're the main character. You deserve. Again, there's like no freaking middle. There's no nuance of your feelings should matter the most to you, but you exist on earth with all these other people. And you have to be considerate of their experiences and your impact on their experiences to coexist peacefully and build community, friendships, partnerships. You can only achieve community love and support by moving through the discomfort of opposing and incomplete views. You can only receive lifelong partnership by enduring the brunt of a person's various stages of development, even when it leaves you without personal consideration. There's a weird disconnect where everyone has become self-aware enough to know that it's not their place to eat shit for the sake of connection. and true, diva, but they don't have enough social awareness to recognize that their love language is others accepting their flaws while not accepting other people's. You want people to eat shit on your behalf. But you understand, you get a little manic sometimes. You get a little weird. You get a little attached. You're a lot to handle, but you have no capacity to handle other people's similar moments. Like, you're not an enemy. You're not the bad one. But if anybody behaved like you do, they are. It's giving, we've gotten to the bottom of the loneliness epidemic, babes. Most people describe their ideal romantic partner as a mindless yes man that responds to every challenging moment within the relationship with perfect emotional regulation and emotional intelligence while never requiring the same level of patience of them. And if they do, it's an attack. And we talk about this a lot from the perspective of like social structures about how women are expected to endure all things. And so there is a form of resistance there. Like, women be like, I'm not tolerating no crap, because usually there's no reciprocation. So there's no value in it. But that is a bit of a different conversation than this ideal that people of any gender in any type of relationship should always cater to your needs, and you should never be required to be patient with them. Like, the ideal wasn't our partners should kiss our butts no matter what. It's like our partners should like give a crap about us on the same level we give a crap about them. They should be investing in us in the same way we invest in them. They should be giving us patience like we give them patience. But it's like this chronic need to protect oneself has gotten us so off script that we're just like, no. I think everything should just revolve around my comfort, and sometimes showing up for people's outside of my comfort. So I'm not going to do that. But I'm so lonely. Why does nobody care about me? Nobody came to my birthday party. Nobody checks in on me. You don't check in on anybody. It's outside of your comfort. As I said in an unnecessarily viral TikTok in real, most people aren't lonely because they need a girlfriend or boyfriend or they friend, right? They're lonely because they haven't invested themselves in building community. But they'll never achieve either because they've allowed themselves to be programmed to believe that the challenges of connection are an instant call to arms. I didn't really plan to end this with a call to action, but I feel like I kind of have to. If I were you, I would take the final, 60 plus days of this year and make a conscious effort to unfreak your brain, unprogram the BS that people have put in your head for the sake of giving you a quick dopamine rush while robbing you of the tools that you need for actual improvement. Because self-improvement, whether you like it or not, includes participating, joining, experiencing discomfort in relationship. Something that I'm very passionate about, something that I've said a lot, something that I said in one of my favorite songs that I've ever written, hasn't been released, is that love in a relationship is not about trust. Love in a relationship is about resilience, which honestly is a form of self-trust. What did I say in this? I was like, I have to trust myself enough to show up to a relationship. I have to trust myself to love myself enough to love me in the event that this relationship ends. It's like, it's really not a fear that someone leaves. It's this fear of you won't be able to self-regulate if you get heartbroken. You don't know what you'll do. You don't know how you'll cope. And so what we're seeking a lot of times is not certainty, guarantees, promises, trust of the other person. We're seeking a hack, a way around trusting ourselves. Like, I don't trust myself to be alone with me. I don't trust myself to love me. I don't trust myself to think of myself as a worthy human being if I'm abandoned again. It's fear of this trust of self. And so it's like, because I don't trust myself, I can't participate. I can't tolerate anything that's scary. And I mean, that's real, diva, but we gotta move past it. We can't live there for 10 years, or we can't live there for 10 years and be like, why am I alone? Because you have to risk some kind of emotional security to participate with people. There's no way around that. That's never going to change. And you can scroll all the TikToks you want that say, cut it, leave it behind. If they were going to, they would have. And a lot of that is true. But what did we say at the beginning of this? A lot of things can be true at once. If they wanted to, they would. But just because they didn't want to, or they couldn't find the capacity to, doesn't mean they hate you. But just because they don't hate you doesn't mean you should stay in a relationship that makes you feel really, really bad, right? But you don't have, if you have to like put it in your brain, I hate them, they're the worst, to separate yourself from the relationship, you've revealed something about yourself. It's like, why can't I tolerate something simply not working out? Why do I have to build a story around it? Why do I have to create an enemy, a villain? Like, why can't I tolerate that? Again, it's coming to self. Why can't I self-regulate? Why can't I self-regulate? That's my favorite question. Like, Kady, why can't we self-regulate, Diva? What's going on? Let's tap in, because it's like, I personally never want to be a person that is so out of control. Again, coming back to, I don't want external things to control me. I respond to external things because I'm a human being. We all do. We're all calibrated like that. But that doesn't mean it should dictate me in my life. And so what I would say for the next, I don't know when this will find you, but this is, coming out the week of October the 7th, 2024. And so I would say for the next 30, 60, how many ever days, 75 days, hard, whatever it is, practice not allowing these ideas to be implanted in your brain in a one-sided fashion. Like, this is true, but so much is true. I might be a main character, but somebody else is a main character in the same world as me. How do I mesh with them? How do I blend with them? How do I see other people as human without abandoning myself? Maybe we'll talk about this on Patreon. Oh, come join us on Patreon. Do, and talk to us on Discord too. But you know what I mean? Wherever you do this work. And honestly, I would love to support you by facilitating these conversations, asking you these questions, championing you, and working through these things. So, email list. I need to get back on my email list grind. Sorry. Email list, Discord, Patreon is really where I'm trying to show up the most consistently. I would love to not do the work for you, but kind of offer my thoughts if it's helpful, because I want the people who encounter my art, my voice, my thoughts, to be able to leverage this information in a way that makes a positive change in their lives. And I think you have the capacity to do that, Diva. You just have to take a breath and calm down and decompress and stop letting the powers that be make a donkey out of you by provoking your emotions. But okay, that's our difficult conversation for the day. I'm KadyRoxz. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.